What's going on, guys? Cultimush back at it with a $700 gaming PC build for you Aussies out there. It seemed like every day I was getting a new request from somebody to do an Australian gaming PC build, so here it is, finally a $700 build for you Aussies, and let's get right into this with the CPU. For the CPU in this build, I went with the Intel Core i3 4160 3.6GHz dual-core processor for around $150. Now, while the i3 being a dual-core processor might scare you off, the CPU also has hyper-threading, adding 2 virtual cores, so that's pretty nice. And the CPU can still run higher-end games like The Witcher 3 if you have a decent graphics card, which we do in this build. This isn't a great CPU for live streaming, rendering, and things like that, but for $150 is a great entry-level gaming CPU. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock H97M Pro 4 Micro ATX LJ1150 motherboard for $110. Even being a Micro ATX motherboard, this motherboard is loaded with features. It's on the LJ1150 socket, so you can upgrade to an i5 or an i7 down the line if you want. It's got 4 RAM slots up to DDR3 1600MHz and up to 32GB of max memory. It's got RAID support, Crossfire support, 6 SATA 6GB/s ports, and onboard USB 3 headers. So for $110, this was a solid Micro ATX motherboard from ASRock. For memory, I went with G.Skill Ripjaws X Series 8GB, 2 4GB sticks running at 1600MHz. $82 for this 8GB kit of RAM, and there's no reason to get any more than 8 gigs for now, but the motherboard does have 4 RAM slots, so that is an upgrade option you'll have in the future. But for now, 8GB is going to get the job done, as most of the higher-end games are recommending 8GB of RAM, so $82 for this kit made a lot of sense in this build. For storage, I went with the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM internal hard drive. And $70 for a terabyte of storage, and I think most of you guys can manage with a terabyte. I thought this was a good deal in the build. For the video card, I went with the MSI Radeon R9 270 2GB twin FROZR video card for $180. Now, this is a great budget graphics card to do 1080p gaming. It won't max out a game like The Witcher 3 at 1080p at max settings, but you can play Witcher 3 at around high settings at 1080p and still get 35 to 40 frames per second. And games like Call of Duty, stuff like that's going to run just fine on the R9 270, and it's on the twin FROZR cooler, so if you do want to overclock it, that option is also open. And this R9 270 also has a really good cooler, so if you want to overclock it and get a little bit more performance out of it, you can do that as well. But for $180, this was a great GPU to go with in this build that's not going to break the bank, but packs a decent amount of gaming performance. For the power supply, I went with the EVGA 500W 80+ bronze certified ATX power supply for $72. This was the one part that I was a little shocked with how expensive this was in Australia. And this 500W power supply for $72 is going to power this build no problem. The i3 is super power efficient, as is the Radeon R9 270. At max, this build is only going to use around 325 watts, so this EVGA 500W power supply is actually going to leave you room to upgrade if you do want to upgrade the graphics card down the line to, say, a GTX 970 or something like that in the future. You'll have that option open, and this 500W power supply was $72, and it was like the cheapest decent power supply that you could get, so you kind of have to go with it. And finally, for the case, I went with the Deepcool TESSERACT ATX mid-tower case. Now, I'm not going to lie and say this is the greatest case in the world, but in this build, I just wanted to get a case that was going to get the job done, and it's only $45, and a lot of the really nice cases were like $70, $80, so go with the Tesseract in a budget build like this. And it's still got a lot of nice features for the cheap price that you're getting it at, and it's got decent ventilation as well, and it's got decent cable management as well, so for $45, this was a case that was very cheap, and it's going to get the job done, and that's really what I wanted out of a case in this $700 build. But I'll try to upload more Australian builds periodically. It's just a little tough on me. I am one guy. So, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.